Welcome back to my channel. Today, I thought I'd react to the Filipina Pea's video about feminism in the Philippines, just to show how one can have some doubts or disagreements, yet not make nasty attacks. Let's start off with Pea's introduction.
As most people know, feminism and the women's movement began back in a time when women were denied the right to vote and often capped out of the workforce. So attempting to secure more rights served a legitimate purpose. But after successive waves of modern feminism crashed over Western culture, all they're accomplishing now is to perpetuate a gender war with no winners, harming the family unit and tearing at the very fabric of society. The purpose of the women's rights movement was achieved a long time ago, yet it continues to cause problems between the sexes, resulting in many men looking east to find their relationships.
That's a concise framing of the history and present problems with feminism in just 43 seconds, and I agree with all of it. P continues.
No matter how you try to package it, Western feminism has a very obvious financial component, like the seizing of wealth once a marriage is over. Well, that won't work here, since there's no wealth to grab, no divorce. We have airtight prenuptial agreements, and the courts don't particularly favor either party. A Filipina dragging her husband to court in an attempt to squeeze money out of him has better odds of getting blood from a mango.
I did find that a little questionable because, for one thing, while there isn't a lot of wealth in the Philippines, there are certainly men who do have wealth. Certainly many Western men do. And some form of divorce may be coming. The prenuptial agreements are certainly important, but only if the expat makes sure to have one. On the other hand, with a much lower percentage of men with wealth, it would still mean less chance of a woman benefiting from a divorce, thus less support for feminism anyway. P also addresses jobs.
And you can't tell Filipinas that they're being frozen out of the good jobs by the patriarchy because it's obvious to everyone that it's the women who have the jobs in the first place and bring home most of the paychecks. So screaming about how Asian women need more rights just sounds silly and isn't going to produce any positive results.
Did P make a mistake? Because according to the data I've seen, men make up the majority of the workforce. I expected that since, especially in a place like the Philippines, where you're more likely to find women who want to be housewives, more women would opt out of the job market. But maybe P meant something a bit different than such raw numbers. Maybe it is about those who want a job outside the home, and perhaps women have the best chance of getting it. That could well be young women. And then, as they start to have a family, they may voluntarily leave the job market, which would result in men having more jobs overall. This is the kind of thing a person, if they are concerned about what P said, they can just ask in her comment section. P did need to be clearer about this. Such things happen in honest discussions. Then P addresses the number of available women.
Another reason that feminism won't take root here is demographical. A large supply of available women like we have here works against feminism. It's the simple law of supply and demand, and it's hard to go making demands when there's so much supply. If I were the last woman on earth, I could pretty much ask for whatever I wanted. But with millions of my Android clones set to hit the market, my bargaining power is greatly reduced. Funny how that works.
This has a similar problem as the last item. The percentage of men and women are almost identical, so P is either wrong or she isn't referring to raw numbers. I suspect the word available is key. We know there are lots of Filipinas with darker skin and that Filipinos tend to not like them as much. We know a lot of women have children, but no husband, or they're separated. They aren't going to be in demand by locals as much either. So I can see how, in a very practical sense, there is a large supply of available women compared to the demand for those women. As such, they can't be as picky and wouldn't be motivated to scare men off with a modern feminist attitude. And unlike in the West, where big government can be used in place of a husband for financial support, in the Philippines, the woman is not going to get much help from the government. So I'm curious about what P meant by all that.
Another reason feminism won't take hold here is because it's completely disorganized. Except on rare occasions in big cities, women won't be marching down the streets wearing pink hats here, because calling attention to yourself is a very un-Asian thing to do. And we prefer to resolve issues without antagonizing each other.
This one is interesting too. I disagree somewhat about the disorganization angle, because I've watched movements in the West for over half a century, and as I already said, what is laughed at as absurd and just crazy talk from a tiny minority have later become a powerful movement. But there are differences in the Philippines that make that less likely. In the West, universities heavily promote extreme feminism, likewise with the media and much of government. This can lead to rapid indoctrination. Also, the church is much stronger in Philippine society than it is in the West. So there are things that work against feminism being as strong as it is in the West. And what about that part concerning the nature of Asians not wanting to draw attention or create antagonism? Well, that absolutely works against feminism, since feminists love to get in people's faces. Is it enough to stop it from being like in the West? I have no idea, but it is a legitimate argument for saying the Philippines won't have the feminist problems we have in the West.
And finally, feminism won't become a big deal here because we've already achieved its goals organically, without conflicts, marches, name-calling, or punishing men along the way.
Of course, Pea is referring to the legitimate goals of feminism for equal rights. Achieving those goals organically is a good thing, but, of course, Western feminists sure weren't interested in stopping with that. They always want more, even when it creates inequality. Pea then takes us into some of the data.
The following is from last year's World Economic Forum and their Global Gender Gap Report, which states that the Philippines is now ranked the top country in all of Asia for women's equality. And apparently, we did it without a vocal feminist movement.
In other words, as Pea said, they don't need it, which means there is less reason for people there to be attracted to the movement. She then breaks the data down into categories.
The rankings are made on the basis of 4 different categories. The first is employment participation. And we got that covered easily because, as I said earlier, it's mostly the women that have the jobs here. Been that way for a long time. The next is educational attainment. And the same thing is true. It's the women who are getting most of the college and professional degrees. Been that way for a long time. The third category is called health and survival. The medical facilities in the Philippines are actually pretty good, and women have the same access as men do. We also have access to birth control here, although most of us voluntarily choose not to use it. And isn't feminism all about a woman's right to choose? The only category we seem to be lacking in is called political empowerment. But when you take a look at how it's measured, it's just a simple quota system that looks at the percentage of women in the government and totally ignores the nature of men and women. The only thing that's important is that women have an equal opportunity to run for office, which we do. But demanding that women make up half the government or any other field, it's ridiculous.
That is an accurate assessment. Pea then makes a very important point.
Now, I run the risk of angering other women when I say this, but it's true. There are actually differences in men and women that make the sexes better at different tasks. Men are better in positions that require a more aggressive and decisive nature, and thinking outside the box, where women perform better in fields involving communication, networking, and multitasking. So I really wouldn't want to see people forced into positions they're not the best at, just for the sake of some stupid numbers game. Women might not hold half of the elected positions, but the system is still perfectly fair if they want to run. Equality of opportunity is the goal, not equality of outcome. Trying to impose a system where 50% of engineers and mathematicians are female and half of all nurses and school teachers are male is a fool's errand. And that's something that Western feminists just don't get. They smell inequality and sexism under every bed. And that's not the way forward for any happy society. We should embrace our differences, not attempt to cancel them.
Boy, feminists hate that. They love to insist women are totally equal to men and so can do any job men can do. But it's funny how they also like to claim that women do some things better than men. Do you see the double standard? It should be obvious. Feminists are happy to say women have inherent advantages, like the ability to network, but can't stand to admit men have their own advantages, which, to me, shows the lie of their fundamental view that all are equal in all things. To them, the concept seems to be, we are all equal, but women are more equal. But back to the point about agreeing or disagreeing with P's view of the chance of feminism becoming strong in the Philippines. I could easily see her being wrong over time. I can also see an eventual reaction in the West to the excesses of modern feminism, in which case it would be extremely hard for it to spread to other places. I can also see her argument about how Asians do things and think about things differently, and so it may never become a huge problem. The point is, my very long experience about these things in the U.S. gives me a different slant on the issue, which would be far more negative than P's. But P's experience living in and being Asian gives her an equally valuable slant. It's all opinion and conjecture, but hopefully with people presenting their reasons and those who disagree presenting their reasons, we can all get a more balanced idea of the possibilities. Now, a quick, concise summary from P.
Fortunately, I don't think it'll get much traction in this part of the world. I'd like to say it's because we're too smart for that. But the truth is, it just has no use for the people here.
My summary is this. P supports her claim. I'm not sure what she means about some aspects of it, but certainly she does have many good points. And if I feel a need to know more, I'll just ask for clarification. Long term, she may be wrong, but I also wouldn't be surprised if she was right. Thanks for watching, and don't let the trolls stop you from speaking out.